It is overtime here again at Old Favorite Friday, and we are continuing the conversation about the Weihenstephaner Hefeweissbier Dunkel. Now, different breweries call this beer a different thing, of the style, different thing. I've seen it done as Dunkelweizen. Hefeweizen Dunkel is what Weihenstephaner goes with. They are the oldest brewery in the world. I believe the oldest continuously running brewery in the world, so maybe we should just go with them. Maybe they know what they're talking about. This is a beer a style of beer that I love, that I do not get a chance to drink very often. You just don't see a lot of these beers out there. Hefeweizens are a very, very popular beer style. We can see them all over the place. And we have actually done the Weihenstephaner Hefeweizen on Old Favorite Friday, which is unshocking because it's one of the classic beers in the world. But I used to love Franziskaner Dunkelweizen. One of the beers that I really gravitated to early on in my beer journey. Love it, love it, love it. Can't find it anywhere. It's a beer I've always wanted to do for Old Favorite Friday, but it's not available in South Florida to the best of my knowledge. This is not a consolatory prize, though. This is an incredible version of a Dunkelweizen or Hefeweizen Dunkel, whatever you want to call it. It is a darker version of a Hefe. It has a lot of those banana, clove, spice flavors. Ralph, you're the flavor guru, the spice guru. What are you picking up in here?
Yeah, so I really like it, and I can see why they chose to call it the way they did, because blindfolded it does and would, like, I could see just calling it Hefeweizen. While it does vary where it has that richness you would expect with a darker beer, it also has got that light drinkability of a wheat beer. And the cool thing about wheat beers in general is they have a crackery cereal character, but if you compare it to like an all barley malt beer, it does have its own unique character and a unique sweetness, which I like, and I try and incorporate even in some of our beers that aren't necessarily primarily wheat. But yeah, I like the way that plays off it. You do get a little bit of the hop, a little bit of a hop bite to balance out the sweetness, but overall, like the name implies, you get that clove, you get that banana. In fact, the yeast with the wheat in this are playing a nice trick where you're getting this spice that normally you would associate it with like a rye malt or something like that, but it's really just the wheat playing off that yeast profile that's throwing up all those esters and phenols.
Yeah, so we are a Belgian-inspired brewery, first and foremost. The vast majority of the beers we do are Belgian-inspired, and because of that, we love yeast flavors and the yeast profile, those esters and phenols you're talking about. This German line of Hefeweizen, of wheat beers, is very much related to what we're doing with our Belgian white ale, right? You know, Hefeweizen and white ales, they're very different beers, but they're in spirit very similar as far as their malt profile and the fact that you're getting so much flavor from the yeast. Different flavors come off of it, but kind of very similar in a lot of ways. So it's no wonder that I gravitated towards Hefeweizens, Dunkelweizens early on, because it's a flavor profile that I eventually ended up falling in love with and being part owner of a brewery and brewing for many, many years. This is a great brewery. Weihenstephaner has tons and tons of beers. We've actually had several other recommendations of beers that we will eventually get to. Thankfully, we get a lot of recommendations that come in, but we'll get to with them. But you cannot go wrong with the beers from one of the oldest breweries in the world. You cannot go wrong with some of these classic German-style beers. And we probably haven't featured enough Hefes on this show, because there's so many great ones out there with incredible flavor profiles. And these are also a very good beer to pair with foods. Is there anything that you're coming up with, Ralph, if you're tasting this flavor profile that you go, I think this would work really well together?
Yeah, so the first thing, and I'll say this, not everyone loves this type of food, but funny enough, because of the spice character, I'd almost think like Indian or even some kind of Thai food, where like, I could see some people being like, oh, that'd be a lot of spice character, but because of the richness of this beer and some of the like tangy and even not just spice in terms of like cloves, but some of the hot nature of some of those cuisines, I think it would actually cut through really well, because you have the spice and you would have like some of the vinegary character of some of the food, and then just that heat. I think that would go really well with it, as well as something like, I could see if you were having some kind of even like something with like a citrus marinade, I could see that clove. It almost has like a cinnamon character to me, but also that kind of banana, which makes you think of kind of a tropical setting. I could see that even going with some kind of citrus marinated meat. that I would pair it with.
And that's the great thing about this is that when you have those kind of spice characters in beer, and we're not just talking about this beer, we're talking about the spice character, the phenolic flavors that comes out of the yeast profiles, is that they can really change with spicy foods. So then it tastes a lot like clove here can be manipulated to taste like a different spice, or elevate a different spice flavor in the food. It's really amazing what beer and food pairings can do. We used to do a big beer and food pairing series here, Throwdowns, a long time ago. Very passionate about it. Unfortunately, we had to stop it because of just necessity, but beer and food are such an important aspect of what we do here at Barrel of Monks, and we love getting people involved in beer and food pairings because they can be so good. They can be just as magical and just as interesting as wine pairings can be. Going back to this beer, I love the fruity aspects of this, the banana, but there's also some darker red fruits that are coming out, particularly because I think the malt and the caramels and stuff like that that are playing off of that, and just a really, really drinkable beer. I mean, you're talking about malt sweetness, but the finish of this is not sweet, right?
No, not at all.
A lot of Americanized versions of Hefeweissens and white ales tend to go too sweet. And you can almost always tell when you get, either a super high ABV, or you just look at some of these, the beers that are coming out of the US, when they interpret these styles, they tend to not leave them dry. The German classic ones, the Belgian classic ones, they always leave the beer dry. They always leave it drinkable. They always leave you wanting more. So this is just masterfully done, excellently crafted from an amazing brewery. And listen, if you see a Dunkelweizen or a Hefeweizen Dunkel, go out and buy it. If you're in South Florida, just for me, because that means that maybe other stores will carry more of them, and maybe I'll get my Franziskaner Dunkelweizen back at some point. I can do it here on Old Favorite Friday. Or if you're in an area that has that beer, reach out to us. You buy it, I'll reimburse you. You can send it over to me. But we appreciate you checking in with us like you always do every week for Old Favorite Friday. Please give us suggestions about beers that we should be featuring in the future for Old Favorite Friday. Please go on our YouTube channel if you're obviously already there, but please poke around on our YouTube channel, see some of the other videos we're doing, other classic beers, having these great conversations, and really just kind of being evangelical about incredible beer styles that we do not appreciate as much as we should. So we'll see you next week. Cheers.
Cheers.